Thank you, Ian, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back from lunch. I'm acutely aware, having done many conventions and many speeches before, that this is the dreaded graveyard slot. There's two things that I hope will keep you awake. One, the possibility that the satellite link live to New York may go down. As they say, never work with animals, small children, or live satellite feeds. And secondly, it's the opportunity for us all to have 20 minutes with the man voted the greatest manager of the century by Fortune magazine and many others early in the 21st century. My first ever interview guest out of about 140 interviews was Michael Parkinson, who was a close business, show business friend of my father's, and I thought Michael would be a good start. And Michael said to me that of all the interviews he's done, there were three people that stood out as being superhuman. They had a charisma, an audience connection, and a perspective on the world that was even greater than all the others that Michael had interviewed. And they were Orson Welles, Muhammad Ali, and Nelson Mandela. And Michael said to me, as you start out doing this aspect of your business career, he said, think who those great people for your era might be and make sure you interview them. And if I look back at that, there were 5 people out of the 130, 140 so who I've interviewed that had that same almost superhuman magnetism. And they were Bill Gates, Lady Thatcher, Sir David Attenborough, and kind of randomly, but it shows our British love of sport, George Best. And then our guest now, Jack Welch. And we've had 2 audiences with Jack, 2 IoD audiences in the past. And his views and his wisdom still hold as true today as they did then. What's particularly encouraging is, in an age of supposed ageism, 3 of those people that I interviewed were well into their 70s. One, in the tragic case of George Best, knew he was dying and was less than 6 months away from death. And one, Bill Gates, was in his 50s. So it's absolutely not true that if you want to be a moving and shaking guru in life, it's all about the young. And that should encourage everyone here today, from you students all the way through to slightly older directors. So without further ado, I'd like to go live now to the satellite link. I would just say that just like the 10 o'clock news, there is going to be a 4-second delay between me talking to Jack and Jack answering. So if it seemed to lack a bit of spontaneity, that's not me and Jack, that is the line. It might seem like a while to you. I can assure it will seem like an age to me. So, for those of you who don't know Jack Welch, it's probably all you wonderful students and startup entrepreneurs here may not know the full story. Quite simply, when Jack left GE had a turnover of $130 billion. And if you compared it with the world's countries in GDP terms, GE at that time would have been one of the top 40 countries in the world. So an extraordinary achievement. His increases in the value of GE are legendary, and he's a great tactician and educator in the world of business. So now we're going to go over, I hope, to Midtown Manhattan to link up live with Jack. And I told you this would seem like an age, so just relax. You are there, Jack. Can you hear me now?
Andy.
Sorry, I'm looking at 2 blank screens.
Hello,
and
Andrew.
I'm so
How are
pleased
you?
you said that to me. You over there in the 3rd row, thank you, sir. Because I'm looking at a blank screen in front of me. Okay, Jack, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Andrew, very well.
Brilliant. Boy, am I glad to see your face. Okay, Jack, let's kick off. I've kind of got 10 questions which we'd like to cover in our 20 minutes. Let's just talk first about China. Everyone is awash with the emerging nations. What is your view of the reality of China now as a global power? And where, in terms of competitive advantage, are the US and the UK entrepreneurs and businesses weak, and where are they strong?
Well, I have nothing really new to add here. China is a true power. When they go through a small slowdown like dropping from 9.5 to 7.5 in a year. The whole world feels that because of the dominant position they have in the export-import markets. They're growing rapidly. They continue to benefit from a simple structure without a messy hierarchy, and they continue to become more efficient, starting to become more entrepreneurial, and they're beginning to build brands. The one thing they don't have yet is a strong brand, but they will have it over the next decade. You'll start to see Chinese brands everywhere. And when they get a brand, they're going to be even a more formidable force in the developed world.
And what about India? Because particularly that is a country where UK businesses think they can do business. Is India growing very much as a Chinese equivalent superpower, or are some of the bureaucracy, etc., problems going to mean India is the second runner?
Well, India is cobbled by just the opposite of China, an enormous democracy that is filled with bureaucrats from every corner of the country. And this makes India have less grease in the wheels. They're slower. Corruption is more rampant. And India's going to have a struggle. I mean, Mohammed Singh has done a beautiful job of getting them to this point, but they're stalled in their bureaucracy, and they're being retarded in their growth, in my view, as I see it, by corruption and a terrible bureaucracy. Now, we still have some great companies there. We have Tata, we have Reliance, big conglomerates that are doing a great job. But in general, the growth of the total economy is being hindered by this bureaucratic, slow-moving, relatively corrupt society.
Okay. One of the things we talked about 5 or 6 years ago...
I don't see them as a force. I don't see them as a force. I don't see them as a force in any proportion to China.
Okay, wow, very interesting. Thanks, Jack. One of the things we talked about 7 or 8 years ago was that in the past, position in your company is real power. How has that diminished or not in the information age, where maybe information or persuasive skills is power, not your position?
Andrew, that gives me a moment, if you will, to talk about leadership and what it takes. In the old days, the stuffed shirt in the corner office could back out off orders, and the employees, because they didn't have the information, generally followed. Today, with information in everybody's hands, with everybody with the same knowledge, one has to have tremendous persuasive skills and leadership charisma to drive things, to get buy-in to where you're going and why you're going there. As I've looked at leadership over the last 30 years, 10 of it managing more than 50 companies in private equity, I see clearly a characteristic that everyone in the room should be thinking about. We talk about energy, we talk about energizing people, we talk about IQ, we talk about passion when we talk about leadership. I have rarely heard the words generosity gene. As I've looked back over 30 years at the bosses I've had, at the managers I've managed, at the directors I've worked with, the generosity gene is the one unique characteristic that all great leaders have. What does that mean? It means they're excited about their people. They're excited to give them raises. It turns them on to see people do well in their organization. They're excited to see their people promoted. They take an idea from somebody and they immediately give credit to the person as they pass it on in the organization. A generosity gene is inherent in every good leader. Everybody in the audience here can think back to leaders they've worked for and people they've led. And if that person was someone who stole ideas from people and kept them close, if that person was stingy with raises and promotions, if that person was jealous of promotions of subordinates, that person never went too far. Think about it. They got a certain distance, but they got stopped. And when you think of the great bosses you've worked with and for, think about that generosity gene. Think if you have it. And if you don't, what can you do about it? A leader's job is to take a can of water in one hand, fertilizer in the other, and think of the employees as seeds. Pour the water and the fertilizer on, grow a great garden, pull out the weeds for the non-performers, but be excited as hell about those flowers that are growing and constantly be taking them. Then you'll get the support and trust of your organization. They'll trust you. They'll want to go across fire for you. And that's what leadership is all about, that generosity gene, building it in an organization as you define where you're going and how you're going to get there.
And that ties in. Yeah, quite right too. Jack, that ties in with your quote that you spent 60% or more of your time on HR issues. And when I was at the Harvard Business School, I had lunch with Alfred Zion, the CEO of Gillette, and he said too, he spent 60% of his time running Gillette through HR issues. And yet we often bump into people, we all do in this room, and someone says, I'm so sorry I never got anything done today. I've wasted all my time sorting out HR issues. Does that again prove that you must, as a leader, spend time on strategy and people as your two main priorities?
Look, building a great team is what leadership is all about. No one person does it. The CEO gets more credit than they deserve for great results, and they gets more blame than they deserve for some bad results. What they have done or not done is build a great team, a cohesive team with a clear mission of where they're going and a set of values or behaviors that define how they're going to get there. So you've got to get in place real leaders, leaders with that generosity gene I just talked about. And you've got to spend all the time you can, and it's certainly more than half your time, building the team. The team is what makes this thing work. Making it work, exciting them, constantly egging them on, touching them, making them feel like you're part of them. You're all part of this thing together, where you have candor and openness, where debate is real. But you've got to be spending all your time. And when you don't see performance, let me tell you something else, Andrew. No one in the room there has the right to ever have a subordinate who is surprised by their evaluation. You've got to be out there talking to your people all the time. No manager, no leader has the right to walk in one day and say to John or Mary, it's time to go, you're not doing well. You've got to tell people all the time where they stand. The obligation of every director is to be sure that their people know exactly where they stand and that they demand themselves where they stand in the organization. This is a key element of leadership. It goes with a generosity gene. Candor goes with people knowing where they stand. When people know where they stand, everybody's moving in the same direction. And they know what they have to do to improve. And when they're not improving, they know they have to move on to something else. But never are they surprised.
Jack, moving on to some of the audience here today, we've got a lot of young students and people whose dream it is to set up their own business. What is the magic formula still for success in setting up your own business? And to what extent has it changed in A, the digital world, and B, the competition with the emerging markets? Do you still need the same DNA and alchemy to succeed, or has it changed?
Well, the DNA hasn't changed. The ease of moving in and out has changed with software. Software is a more easily developed process. You don't need factories, you don't need other things. But the absolute passion and the idea that, I hear it all the time. I want to start my own business. Great. What's your idea? What is your aha? What do you have that others don't have, that market is yearning for? If you've got the idea and you've got the burning passion in your belly, you don't have an issue. You've got the world by the tail. And in developed markets like the US and the UK, getting funding is easy with a good idea. But you better have an idea that knocks the hell out of the park, knocks everything out of the way, and then you've got to have in you a burning, burning desire to see that thing through, because there'll be roadblock after roadblock. There'll be people that'll push you down. There'll be teams that'll disappoint you. There'll be shortfalls in your product delivery, all these things. And you've got to have the I'll go through the wall to get there feeling. But if you got that and you got an idea, nothing's more exciting, nothing is more fun, and the world will make you both a wealthy person in the wallet and in the soul, because you will have made a real contribution. So if you got it, go like hell for it.
Wow. Jack, in terms of executive education, you're now spending your life between VC opportunities, and you set up basically the Jack Welch University Business School. What advice would you give one of our students today in their 20s who's done their first degree? And what advice would you give a director here today who's already a director in their mid-40s about what they need in terms of formal executive education to survive and thrive in the current environment? And you can plug your own university.
Well,
here.
this is a very tough, generic question to answer. If we're talking about that entrepreneur with the idea, going through the wall, with a passion for it, the hell with more education. Just go and make that thing happen. If you're in the middle of a company and you're managing a few people, education, nothing is better. In our school, the Jack Welch Management Institute, it's an online school. We've got close to 600 people now. We're at 580. We've been going for 2.5 years. What we do is we teach on Tuesday, you practice on Wednesday, Friday you bring back the results of your practice. So you're living and breathing in an online way at a much lower cost than taking 2 years off and going to a school and locking yourself in, and 2 years later you might try some of the techniques that you learned in school. But nevertheless, education, if you're in a corporation, credentials count. Whether you like it or not, it's reality. And so every time you get another notch on your belt, you learn more, you are perceived as somebody who had the stick-to-itiveness to go out and get it. The average age in my school is 38 years old. These are middle managers from all the great companies in the world. They want to get up in their organization. So they are working people at home with families. They're working in organizations, and at night they're studying. It's asynchronous, so they can do it when they want to. But they deserve extra credit for the enormous commitment they're making in their life and the options they're taking. But online education, whether it's mine or others, has to come faster and harder, because we've got to improve the economics of education. Education is one of the most hidebound, old-fashioned systems that ever existed. Tenure is an outdated policy. Teachers teaching 40, 60, 70 hours a week, a year, ridiculous. The whole efficiency system in the education system is wrong, and the affordability is too difficult, too high, and therefore some very deserving young people. The poor are truly disadvantaged in the education area, and we have to fix that, and we have to streamline education, make it more productive, break some of the hidebound bureaucracies that faculties have built up, and make education more affordable and available to more and more people. So I'm all for it, and I believe online is the real breakthrough change in education. We see our students learning on Tuesday, practicing on Wednesday, sharing the experience on Friday, real time, real life, and the average increase has been double-digit in salary for our graduates, and 58% have been promoted because they're able to take stuff and use it tomorrow to change the world they're living in.
Jack, an absolutely fantastic time. Unfortunately, we're running out of time now. As ever, your insight and passion is incredible, and I think I speak on behalf of all 3,000 of us and the media here today to say that if we have half your passion and half your vision, if you don't mind me saying so, at the age of 77, we'll all be extremely happy. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Jack Welch.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Jack. I'd just like to say I'm very proud to run a global organisation, the Association of MBAs. I've had an absolutely wonderful time at the IoD, and it is, and for me always will be, the very best British institute. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.